Hello and welcome to The Dive, Season 5, Episode
presented by Honda
22. Thank you, Honda. I have been thoroughly razzed
brain farted
by my two
Kobe's
compatriots
struggling this morning.
here. They intentionally tilted me, and we're going to move through it, you know?
You woke up upside down and we're trying to right you by tilting you back around, you know?
Great news, guys. The world cities have been announced. Honestly, Shanghai, every time we go back to China, I feel like we got to go to Shanghai. Definitely super excited for that one. Wuhan and Qingdao and Chengdu. So I don't know if I even said the Qingdao one correctly, but that and Chengdu are two that we haven't been to before. We've been to Wuhan before.
Have you been to Shenzhen? It's where it's ending.
Yep, the finals are in Shenzhen.
Yeah, I have not also. So we got three new ones.
Where was the city that we went to, you know, when we were in Worlds and they had that big park and we were right near that huge park that we went and they had a boat. We went on little boats and stuff.
I wouldn't
It was
know.
a coastal one. Yeah, Mark wasn't there.
That
I've
was
never
my
been
favorite
to
city,
China.
but I always forget the name, which is terrible. But it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. I mean, we're probably not going to be there, but but people will be there.
Can't wait to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning for our call times.
True. But I'm excited, you know, that it's going to be a multi-city event, right? It's cool. Obviously, they're having it in China again because last year they couldn't have the full experience, and League is so huge in China. So I expect it to be quite the spectacle, and I'm pretty hyped to see like what they come up with as far as stage design and everything like that.
Yeah. Honestly, though, speaking of what's big in China, Uzi talked about on his stream, and I remember even maybe a whole year ago doing dive episodes, as soon as he retired, I'm like, there's a good chance he comes back, okay? This guy is so competitive, and he left the door open on purpose as far as, when I, recover from some of my injuries, work on some of these issues, I always have had fingers crossed. I'm hoping that he comes back because he is one of those iconic players that generations of AD carries have looked up to over the course of League of Legends. So I hope that he gets a spot back on RNG. I think that might be difficult, but he is literally the most popular player ever in China, which is the biggest region ever. So he's got some pull, guys.
It's interesting because I do think it's one of the situations where it's like, would I like to see Uzi back as he was? Yes. But do I think Uzi would be back as he was? No, probably not, right? Like it's very difficult if you take a couple years off to come back and be at the exact same level. I am not familiar with exactly how hard he's grinding. If his life hasn't changed at all and he's literally just League of Legends 24/7 still, then maybe he is at that same level.
I've seen some good clips.
Yeah. But
but they're cherry picked. So.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of highlight montage players, and then you see them in pro games, and you're like,
It's just one of those things where like a lot of people when you come out of retirement, it's just not the same. Like your life's changed. You don't have the same practice regimen. You fill your time with other things. It's difficult to go back to the pro gaming life. And so like I would love to see him back at that peak level. And if we get that, that'll be really, really exciting. But I would kind of be sad if Uzi ends up joining like a 14th place team and it's just like not good in the LPL. Like that would be kind of sad. And like,
why are you bringing this bad energy in here?
Well, I'm just saying,
Michael Jordan to the Wizards.
Exactly, right? It's literally that, and I don't want that for him. I want like my pristine memory of Uzi. So I hope he can do it if he goes for it. But why would RNG take him when they just want MSI? Right? It makes no sense.
Because he's Uzi, dog.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. It'll be cool. It'll definitely be exciting to see how he does.
Yeah.
I just hope for him if he comes back, he's still on top.
Definitely where he belongs to be.
All those other people look up to, everyone else looks up to Dhokla. He's back, baby, too. On TLA, signed there. I'm excited Dokla's back. I cast one of his games in Academy last week. He still looks pretty good, coming out of amateur where he was playing. And it does cement some more of the Team Liquid changes with Jenkins, the fact that they're putting in someone to fill his time in Academy so he's not pulling double duty.
That to me is kind of the bigger point, is that it's like, all right, you signed another player. The end date, I think they said for his break was the 27th, right? So that is going to be, coming up next weekend, but I am feeling like he's not coming back, right? And an Academy player getting signed, so you have two top laners also feels like he's not coming back. I mean, sure, it could be a temp contract. I don't actually know the details, but it feels more and more like, Alfari's not going to be back.
He's not. I'm saying it.
All right.
Not.
Book it.
They are either... I'm saying so there's a very high chance that they trade him because he has too much value not to play. I just hope that
and his salary is huge.
I just hope that he stays in NA and goes to another NA team so that overall our talent pool will.
Where would you like to see him go?
Him. Honestly, I was about to say Huni. If you had asked me a week ago, I would have said Huni, but Huni had such a good weekend. I actually, it'd probably still be, a good move for TSM, but Huni had such a good weekend. I can't do him to it. I can't do that to him after that, I
mean, it would be tough because it's honestly as good as some of the other top laners are. Alfari was so much better than everyone in spring, I felt like, right? So if you're not dissuaded at all by, these potential issues that went on and whatever, and you're looking purely at performance, there's literally not a team in the league that would not want him just based purely off of performance.
One of the biggest things,
but can you afford him too?
One of the biggest things, though, for TSM, and they keep citing not making player changes as being one of the reasons that they have risen to the top. And it's hard to argue with all the other teams kind of self-sabotaging. Yes, they didn't want this to be the situation, benching Sven, benching Alfari, and they feel like their hands were forced into these situations, but that is a deep rabbit hole to go down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when the top four are all one game apart, or they were. It might be 2 games now between like TSM and Team Liquid. But during this weekend on Sunday, all the teams were 1 game apart, and so like a lot of those teams probably don't want to mess with their formulas, and so you're probably looking at more like a 5th, 6th place team that they could end up on.
Yep, it is definitely interesting. Unless you think that will give you a leg up on the rest of the competition. Because if you think that there's 4 teams competing for 3 spots,
as the season goes on, you get more data. So like if one of these teams is like, oh, we're not doing it, go get Alfari, let's spring for I don't know, maybe.
All right, all players are toxic. Double Lift had a clip that was kind of making the rounds saying, people basically. Everyone's toxic. Bjergsen's toxic. He's toxic. Faker's toxic. Everyone's toxic.
Except for Apollo.
And maybe Sneaky.
Maybe Sneaky.
And, some other people were talking about it. Like Monty was tweeting about, you're kidding yourself, basically, if you don't think that, like, everyone is toxic, essentially, if they are a competitor. To me, this is a bit of a weird one. And I think at the end of the day, it's like any stance on this is somewhat defensible because it depends largely on your definition of what is toxic, right? Is every competitive player, like anyone who really rises to the top, like, do they trash talk and stuff? Yes. Like, do they have an ego? Yes.
Do they get upset when they lose?
Do they get mad when they lose? Yes. Right. Like, but there's such a big difference, and that's where I think this whole like conversation, or at least where it was evolving to, less about like what Double Lift said or what anyone individually said, but more where it feels it's evolving, feels kind of disingenuous, is that it's then pretending like it's going from that to like everyone flames the shit out of their team. Like, no, they don't. That doesn't happen. Like, I've been on really good teams, and I lived with all these StarCraft players that like played together and trained together, and like there were some people that were like that, but no one liked working with them. They were horrible to work with. I've even played with people like that. And when you have people that are being passive aggressive and constantly chipping away at your teammates, it's just so miserable. Like, I'm not gonna. It doesn't really matter about naming names. No one even know who I'm talking about. But like playing with players like that, I've literally changed rosters myself because it was just such a horrible environment. Every time you lose, it's like chipping away. It's like, why'd you do this, Kobe? Mark wouldn't have done that. He would have done it better. What are you doing, right? Like those comparisons, it just ruins the environment. And so I think it's totally not true to say like everyone does that kind of stuff. And to me, that's more what's toxic. Like, does everyone at some point say, yeah, this guy sucks, or like, whatever, or get frustrated or those types of things? Yeah, sure. But I feel like the conversation's got a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I think like you're saying, how the conversation evolved, it kind of went from like all players are toxic, which is kind of like what Double's point was, into like, what is toxicity? It kind of became that, and like where that term came from and stuff. Going back to the all players toxic, which is I think the more interesting part of the topic, is like it totally removes any sort of degree, as if all layers of toxicity are the same. Saying something bad that you shouldn't have said is not the same as you're talking about, which is like actively undermining your team and not trying to win. Like, all the players I worked with, like everyone has had moments where you're like, come on, man. Like I was with Special one time. We lost a really close game. He was heated. He spiked a water bottle, like, is that toxic? And like, starts swearing about like, oh, goddamn, we shouldn't have lost this game, blah, 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 like popping off about the game. No, it's not toxic to me. Like, if he calms down, we all talk about it. We do a real VOD review next day, whatever. It's fine. That's different than someone who, like, in scrims is insulting his teammates and intentionally not trying to win, or like not listening to his teammates and not even following pick ban when we're like, hey, can you draft this? And the player's like, no, insta-lock something else. I'm like, okay, you are toxic. You are actively attempting to hurt our ability to win versus like emotions got the best of you, kind of like, you popped off, let's go outside, like, take a moment kind of thing. Like, there's such a degree in like what toxicity can do. Whenever you say everyone's toxic, it's like, well, there's degrees, and like I've worked with a lot of people, and I would say very few are toxic on the level that like you can't work with.
I think the biggest difficulty when this conversation keeps on coming up is that there are a lot of people that try to overgeneralize and combine multiple parts of the human psyche when discussing this, because at the core, they are taking the argument that competitive people care very deeply about these things, and that passion, I think, is true as far as all competitive gamers have that. And there is another layer between you interfacing this feeling and other people, and that is called social skills. So yes, all competitive players have very strong feelings on this, and yes, they might be negative feelings. They might be toxic, which is one of the most overused words of the last 5 years, but it's not as if you cannot train this skill. Social skills are just that. How you interface with other humans is how you control these things. So when people just want to chalk it up as, oh yeah, we're also competitive. Yeah, this is how we feel. I say yes. And you can work on these things and how you're going to play in a team environment, because so many competitive games are team-based games. And this is an aspect of those games. That is a skill that you can train that will make you better at this game, because as you're referring to, your teammates will be happier. You'll interface better. If I can communicate to you the specifics of my feedback, and I give Azael some feedback that can actually help him be better, then he's actually going to be happy and thankful to me, rather than I give him the same feedback with just the baseline animalistic, fuck you, you did this wrong, you're stupid. We might have to bleep that.
It's okay, I can take it.
But that is, I feel like this, and that for me is such a clear and easy separation in these arguments and in this topic, that it feels like so many people kind of miss this extra step in this connection.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it's like, I will never say that there was never a time where like I got heated. Oh, I was perfect calm at all times. No, of course not.
Exactly.
But it's about how you handle it. And that's what you're kind of getting at, right? Like, pretty much I can say universally, every time I lost at a BlizzCon or whatever,
pissed.
I was pissed. Especially if I felt like a teammate like really like,
did you get in any arguments?
Like shit the bed or something. And we did get an argument.
Oh my God.
But to be honest, mostly after I lost or got knocked out or something like that, like I was furious, and I would need time to go cool off, right? And I knew that I needed time to go cool off. And I would go back and I would think about it. And it's like, yeah, like maybe I'm mad at a teammate for making a mistake, but also I would never have gotten here without that teammate in the first place. And I probably made a mistake in the last game, right? And it's like, these are these things that I just think it's all about how you handle it, all about how you define it. But I don't think that like normalizing some of like the really, whatever you want to call it, like bad behavior or negative behavior, it is a good thing. And then there's also a reason, like people want to act like Team Liquid and these teams are so stupid and they're just like self-sabotaging out of like ego or something like that. And I don't buy that, right? People make these roster changes where they're dropping a big star, not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. You can disagree with that, but at the end of the day, if the environment in a team gets to a certain point, you can no longer be successful. And I believe that is 100% true. And I don't have the insight to know like where these points were, but I have been in those environments where you just will not win.
I mean, that's part of the issue for why it tends to get generalized as all being the same thing, is that like in the most extreme cases, usually people don't air that dirty laundry.
Yeah.
Especially these days in the scene. But like if you go back and you're like, everyone's toxic, but then like you look at some of the old CLG videos that came out and like some of the live streams of that, like the way they talk to each other, and like, wow, I can't believe that team was dysfunctional. You know, like some of those, I can't believe they got rid of that player after watching that tirade. You know, like I think since you don't have that layer of visibility anymore, it's easy to be like, well, this player has behavioral issues and this player has behavioral issues, but they're really like this far apart when you actually looked at the situations, but we just don't know what they are.
Yeah. And those interactions are one of the things that a lot of teams have put specialists on their coaching staff, you know, to try and be mediators and try and deal with these. And I think that's a worthy position, but it also is incorporated and should be skills that people all the way up the power structure feel like they should be hands-on with, because it can be helped from both sides. And something that Double is kind of referring to is like, you should not be surprised when these players are toxic. I am not. I've been playing video games online my entire life since you could dial up to the internet and play games online. So I'm not surprised. And I feel like I also, even in being able to handle my social interactions with people, maybe better than average, can also handle theirs, which may not have as much filter on them, and not be surprised, or, you know, also lend some understanding to it. So it's a very interesting topic, and I understand exactly where everyone is coming from, and they're just kind of building off that.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool one.
All right, we got the Honda MVP discussion this week. What was your favorite draft strategy of the week?
MVP draft for me. I mean, everyone's going to say the CLG one, so I'm going to not do that. I'm so subversive. I'm going with the 100 Thieves Ziggs support with Fasting Senna. I thought that was a really cool draft. That's obviously the core of it, being like, wow, look how hard they can push in and like do all this, insane turret damage, and they're really annoying and obnoxious, and they have globals help across the map. I also like that they paired it with a Ryze and a Nocturne, who also have like global mobility and playmaking. And the game got really messy because I think they were pretty sure they were going to win, and they were playing a little loose, it looked like. But I did like the overall cohesion in the comp beyond just like the flashy Ziggs bot pick.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And something I mentioned in one of the casts is the idea that there are now a couple mages that are in there, like Ziggs is one of them. I think Xerath I've seen a little bit in solo queue, that actually are control mages, but can pair well with dive strategies because they can reach backline. So I'll be interested to see if there is that evolution where people are like, well, I want wave clear, but I also want to be able to one-shot the backline. So I'm going to go Ziggs with like Rumble Nocturne, top side, and I'm going to ult in when they do the equalizer and the Nocturne ult.
I just really enjoy that this is one of the more different strategies that are available right now. There are so many right now. I love the current state of the game because you can try so many different strategies and play off so many different unique strengths of champions, because this is one where they are pushing bottom lane, just lane dominance, even before you get into diving team fights later on with other champions and with the range. The amount of abuse that you can throw out with these Ziggs lanes is immense. And with things like Ezreal being uncontested as, one of these super, top priority bottom lanes, as having a really weak lane phase, not being able to control minion waves, guess what? How can you punish that to the maximum? Use some of these unique champion strengths that we haven't seen in so long of, harassment in lane, pushing the wave, and blowing up the tower. I love that. So I definitely agree with the 100 Thieves shout out. I also, because, so many people were talking about the CLG one, decided to not go CLG. I wanted to give look
at these hipsters.
I wanted to give a hipster star.
Where's my PBR?
Fedora tap to, and this one is reaching out there to one of the bottom teams, to FlyQuest, because FlyQuest, we've given them so much criticism, not having identity, not coming in with these game plans, but the Sejuani plus melee solo laners and fighting those early duels is something that I have come back to a lot in the jungle. And Sejuani is not and has not been ever since she got nuked out of competitive play for being there too long, one of the best tanks. Zach, even Rammus, much higher win rates right now. But the synergy and the specific strengths of these champions are being highlighted. Ziggs for tower killing, for lane punishment, Sejuani for playing with melee champions to proc the stun to go for these early duels and be the front line and the hard engage. In a meta that has so many melee champions, these are the things that make you love strategy games. And it's just so refreshing to finally be out of champ selects where we're like, well, they banned out the first 3 of the top tier list of this role. Guess what? I think they're going to go with number 4. Good one. Good one. Oh, the next
smart.
role.
I am once again requesting a poppy. I can't remember. I want to say it was Revenge was talking on Twitter about Sejuani top being maybe
it got played several times in the LPL.
Some pro tweeted and it was just like their match history, all wins, all Sejuani top.
I think someone said
Alorum. Okay.
Alorum I think outed someone as playing a lot of Sejuani top, and then they're like, don't do this. Yehoda's gonna beat me with beat me up for leaking our strats.
That's funny. All right, and I think because you guys didn't touch on it, I will say CLG. I like the idea of this kind of like just hard commit dive comp. Anytime teams have been struggling, I am always someone who recommends, all right, play simple, play front to back, play multiple forms of engage. This is just kind of like the even more hardcore version of that, because usually the kind of standard 5v5 is like, all right, you draft 2 forms of engage. Traditionally in the past, it had been like jungle or top as a form of engage, support as a form of engage, and then you draft some powerful scaling for your mid, for your AD, and you 5v5. This is just like an even more simple version of that. They're drafting like essentially 4 forms of engage in every one of their games. Only their AD, and even if you want to count Kalista engage with the ult, then it's like 5 forms of engage. So they are clearly going in. They're doing a lot of ways to do it. But to me, the key is less that they just like drafted these tools and more the mindset with which they are playing, right? They are not hesitating at all on the engaged tools. And I think that is actually so key, and it's so easy to say, but people do hesitate on those. And then those comps become worthless all of a sudden.
I think it also shows how some teams are not used to that much engage. Like in the 100 Thieves game, they're like, well, we got Tom Kench. And normally if you have 1 to 2 forms of engage, Tom Kench saves you from one of them. And then it's like you have flash for the other or something. And then you just watch FBI this game like,
but here's Rakan, here's Set, here's Kalista.
Here's Galio. You're just like, well, I guess I'll just die. Like the old guy shrugging.
I love that it got to the point that Senna's just running away from Tom Kench and is like, good luck, see ya. Maybe you can get yourself out because I know you can't save me. Honestly, though, too, I feel like it is a lot about the incorporation of large AoEs as well. And we mentioned this last week where I was like, the Galio and the Swain and these things with giant AoE really will excel in heavy melee metas as well, with so many of these champions popping up. Should have added Lissandra on there as well, because it's the exact same idea with the big AoEs. So I think the Galio was critical to it. As well as the Lissandra.
So back on Mundo watch here, I've been determined to find something this champion doesn't suck at, and I think I've found it. So
it was a long search.
It was a long search. So definitely it's hot garbage if you're blind picking it, is the conclusion that I've come to, because it feels like every game I'm playing into a Gwen or an Nasus or something. I can't do anything, and then I just really hate my life. But I played it into Renekton, and I was realizing, oh my God, the passive is actually so good here, because the passive immune's the first form of CC that hits you I can't remember exactly, but every X seconds. And then you can pick up your little, blob for a heal, essentially the mini Zac passive. But Renekton really depends on actually having this stun, the W for a lot of these training patterns. And like, you completely nullify that. And so I played this matchup, it felt insane. I looked at the win rate data. Mundo has like a 56% win rate against Renekton. The other one that I had found is actually playing it into Jace, because the poke through minions with the E is actually pretty good against Jace. It gives you some ability to actually fight back towards him, because he's not generally a champion that builds a lot of early sustain. Like sometimes they are going for Eclipse, but with Q poke if he's outside minions, E poke if he's in the minions, feels like you actually have these two matchups that are fairly meta in the pro level that Mundo actually is really good into. So I'm slightly revising my opinion that like maybe situationally Mundo could be used, but still definitely do not blind pick this champion. It is not fun.
I guarantee you it's not making it into pro play. No one's gonna practice that.
I think it's really good in those specific matchups.
I feel like every split or every year we hear Azael being like, yo, I was playing this thing and it's actually so good in X situation. Never comes to pro play.
However,
I'm always sad. I wish it did. But
go ahead.
I do want to raise you though. Mark has not been good with his guarantees this year. So
We'll get into that.
I've convinced a few pros to play stuff before.
Well, what's like your crown jewel of like, I was here first and I got other people, like I was the early adopter. Do you have like
probably. I mean, for pro play, it was probably Malzahar. I was telling people to play that in pro for months, and to be fair, I can't take credit for actually people starting to play it at all because everyone didn't listen to me, and then Faker played it, and then it went to 100% pick. But I was like, I told you, and I told I talked to like 5 different mid laners, and they're like, I don't know, man. I'm like, I swear to God, this champion is so overpowered. It got nerfed, then Faker played it, then it was 100% pick ban, and I was like. But sometimes I'll go in pro streams and be like, hey, play this. Someone picks something. I'm like, hey, play this matchup. They're like, okay. And then they're like, oh, this is pretty good. But then they never play it in pro. So I'm always sad.
Yeah, those types of ones where they give you a little bit and dangle it out. Like, this in scrims, I've been doing really well with this. I ran into some players right before in the makeup, dropping some of those and.
Didn't see any of them.
Yeah, nope. That's why the first day I was so excited. I was like, oh, I have all these things, guys. New patch. It's going to be so fun. There's going to be so many cool picks. And then just hit none. Never lucky.
Vi?
No hits.
Cool.
So the Vi one, I didn't get to cast that game.
Disaster.
I was ready. And then it was only in the later game, only in the CLG game. And so I was still sad. But... Divine Sunder, very good right now. So Vi is decent with it. Really, though, what I wanted to highlight for solo queue for this episode is not a champion, but an item. And as a jungler, you know what I actually look for the most nowadays is my support item build. For whatever support I have in the bottom lane, I'm crossing my fingers. I'm hoping we get some kind of enchanter for SHURELYA'S. SHURELYA'S is my number one favorite item in the game right now to have on my team. I'm begging my team now. You know what? Pick some Zilean support. Go get in there. I don't care how bad you lose lane. Whatever is going to happen. Just make me go 9,000 miles an hour.
He's having chem tank withdrawals. He's like, where's my speed up?
They're reducing. They're reducing mobility. But have you ever had as good of a feeling
building SHURELYA?
I had this Zilean come into my jungle at my blue buff, give me the speed up, and I ran all the way down the lane and tower dove the enemy Samira and got out before the Zilean wasn't even there with me. He was like, go on, my friend, be free. And I just dove him all the way down the tower, zoomed back out before the enemy jungle could even rotate over. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually the best thing ever.
Well, let me tell you a little secret though. The Zilean speed up only lasts like 2 or 3 seconds.
When you have the SHURELYA'S on it, I got all the way down there. It was insane.
You know those videos where like the whole team builds move speed items and champions and they see how fast they can get the Rammus to go? That's basically what Kobe wants to do. Yeah. He wants to be the Rammus in that scenario.
I did it, okay? I'm telling you. I
play Zilean mid. Those comps are fun, man. That's like when I play with Flowers, I just know Flowers is gonna be a madman and be Skarner and build only damage and stuff. So like I'll just play Zilean mid with him. That stuff works. It's fun.
Favorite item.
Coming to the LCS near you?
It's already prevalent in the LCS.
Yeah.
Yeah. SHURELYA'S definitely.
Yeah. I meant the Rammus Powerball speed up comp.
The Rammus 5-man speed up.
So that was what I've been trying to convince people. Blabber was one of the ones in there. I was trying to convince for Rammus, and he was not buying. He was like, "Yeah, I tried it too, but
all you need is Lulu, Zilean, Karma, and Jace, and then a Rammus jungle. Perfect. The ideal composition.
It doesn't contest Scuttles well enough for Blabber.
Oh my God.
All right. So TSM has been doing really well. And it's interesting, there's kind of been this discussion about who is performing the best. Like, why are they're performing so well? Like, is it the whole team? Is it one individual player? Like, what has really been working with TSM for you guys?
To me, the biggest thing is that they've stayed with the roster and they haven't made these roster changes, honestly. If we're going to point out individual players, this last weekend, I'd say maybe Spica has racked up the most consistently good games over the whole stretch. Huni had huge performances for me. But again, this is with confidence and with building on this team that you actually get through some of the bad performances and some of the bad times, and you're building week after week after week and until you get, the different individuals shining. And I guess if I had to give an award, maybe it would probably be to Spica, but that to me has been the kind of overall theme here for TSM and their rise to the top. I was thankful they gave a nice little quick dip before so I could win my bet with Mark and then right back up.
Like, if they are first for every single week for the rest of the split, let's say this theoretically happens and it's just week 2 where they screwed me, I will feel pretty good still. I'll be like, in spirit, like, I was kind of right. Like, they just, like, played Lucian a little bit week 2, you know, lost some games. But then, you know, I'll still feel pretty good, and I'll wear my cosplay best of both worlds. I got to say, PoE, for that reason, is probably one of the people I look at on the roster as, like, you can argue the best. I think he has a very defined play style. We talked about some of it last week, and it's not like he doesn't play other champs well or whatever it is. It's just like, we looked at, I did like a little thing. It didn't end up using it this week, but it was like broken into 3 categories, basically like regular mages, like front to back control mages / supportive mages, other kinds of mages like Ryze is more 1-3-1 or Galio, these kinds of things, and then like melee / physical damage. And it was like 5 times more in the first category of games played. Like, he just plays way more games of like standard mages, and I think that's fine. And when he's on those, like, he is such a like ticking time bomb, it feels like, in a lot of these games, especially when the rest of the team, like in their game versus Cloud9, support that play style. And I think I think it's fine to be that. You know, you have some, like, Speak is so good about like making sure the win conditions are online for them, like controlling to make sure Victor has time to scale and finding these like objectives and stuff. Like, the whole team works so well together.
If his control mages are ticking time bombs, then his LeBlanc is just a pre-placed proximity mine. As soon as you get close to it, boom, somebody blows
that's
up.
what I'm saying. Like, he clearly plays other things well. It's not a shot at him. It's just like, this is like who he is. And
yeah. Well, the concern always just comes to me is if you play another team that is equally as good and can also play the more meta, like the stronger champions currently, then it can be tough, but it hasn't been an issue for them yet. And I think, you know, playing what you're strong at is really important. I'm surprised neither you mentioned Huni, though, because I think Huni is kind of... Oh,
he gave a quick, like, this weekend but maybe not the whole
But you
split.
said, I guess, Spica was your guy, though, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I think Huni has been playing, you know, better than he has in a long time. And maybe it's partially because he's just on a better team. Like, that obviously helps. But he has been having a really, really good split. And even to me, it's like less about the statistics. It's been actually more about him making some pretty good decisions and pretty big plays. When I think about it was the game against Immortals that they won, it was like largely off of Huni split pushing and having, I think, pretty good timings of like when he would actually base and when he wouldn't, and he would commit to the split push, you know, finding I believe it was that 1v1 kill in the bot lane that eventually then led to him like just staying bot and finishing the game in that kind of crazy base race. When I look at the C9 versus TSM game, Perks was the key member there. Both fights around Baron, he find really good kicks on him to actually knock him into the team and basically eliminate any chance C9 had coming back. So it's been nice to see him playing well again.
I just want to say real quick, the funniest memory about the TSM base race and how exciting it was, because we don't get to see, oh my God, how did Huni end it? You know, it's off screen. The camera just all of a sudden moves down there, and then they show the replay, and he's like, 2-tap this tower that's almost dead, 2-tap this one, and the next
crazy.
And you're like, whoa, what a game ender.
I know people were like, oh, show both at the same time, but it is kind of crazy when you get the like pan down. There was like that really epic CLG TSM game, I think, that had a pan like that before as well. Those are really hype because it is that like unknown, like, oh my God, he actually did it. Like, I didn't even realize that was a possibility. And then you can always have the replays to look back at how close it really was. The CLG game, or the C9 game, excuse me, also not just those Baron fights, but like some of the lane gank setups that he gave to be, because he was like the only early game playmaking tool. You're not going to go Victor. You're not going to go Lulu with the volley bear. You're basically going to go top. And they found opportunities onto the Jace, which was really good.
Yeah, I think he's had a lot of very good ultimates, and they keep picking him champions with game-breaking ultimates. The arm for my mic is just so weak. I keep wanting to move it up.
Just gotta leave it.
Scales with the caster.
Otherwise, it starts wobbling.
Moving on though to 100 Thieves as well. You know, right at the top of the charts there with TSM. I'm gonna do this where I give him a little boost.
Just rip it off cradle. The arm. And just hold it yourself.
Nice to sit right there. 100 Thieves, to me, one of the things that I want to applaud them the most for, because of how much I love this current meta, and we already talked about the flexibility.
They kicked it over.
Keep it together.
As long as you don't say anything, it's fine. So you keep
reminds
smiling.
me of like the iBoy thing, where he like takes the microphone away from and he's just holding it himself.
The flexibility of this team, Azael, I just like that. And again, we've come back to mentioning Reaper so many times, but it is always hard to really showcase coaching changes because there's so little info and you don't have any top secret, behind the scenes. We don't get to listen to their scrims and stuff, but it does feel like there has been an instant. Oh my goodness. They, with the Abadage stuff first. Oh, he's on Karma. We're sticking with it. We're going to do these supportive things. But you know what? We don't have to stick with that. We're going to do Akali. Then we're looking at bottom lane. Huhi, one of his biggest strengths. He used to be a mid laner. Throw some mages down there. Ziggs right now, punishing that way. It just feels like they are willing. And this is something I've always associated with Reaper. Not only is he willing, but he loves that stuff. He's like, yo, you got a game on this? You played this one time in solo queue? Hone that. We're pulling that out in rank play. And he really likes kind of building those counter strategies and always having multiple things ready. So I feel like, to me, that's one of the most exciting things for 100 Thieves, because everybody's like, yeah, they're on the rise. 100 Thieves, they're going to the top. Especially Freak is like, they're going to win LCS.
Anyways, 100 Thieves. Flexibility, great, interesting, because TSM, other end of the spectrum, feels like we want them to generally be playing, or at least I want them playing their style. But they're both 7-2 in summer. They both also beat the other top 4 opponent that they had in C9 and TL. So it feels like these are the two teams that we're comparing. And I think it's also interesting because 100 Thieves in that like Immortals game that they ended up winning had some really questionable plays, like the top dives that were kind of going on. In the FBI interview, he was like, well, I'm glad because it gave me space to just push bot lane permanently. But at the same time, it was like the one at a time running into top in some of these early games sometimes has had some oopsies from them, but they're so aggressive, I guess you say. Like, they don't get deterred from a bad play and they just keep going in. That plus the flexibility, the ability to play early game oriented is something that in the current meta where we see so many of these 4 melee comps, the all dive comps from CLG that maybe we'll start seeing people picking up this week, that all does seem to lend a little bit more towards the current 100 Thieves style.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to be afraid of making a mistake, right? Like that's not how you play the best League of Legends. People often refer to G2 when they're talking about really aggressive league. They're a team that has good plays and bad plays in pretty much every single game, right? It's one of those situations where it's like, I think Avadaga was a good example in the game against TL, where he got a solo kill in Jenkins and he got outplayed and he got solo killed one of the times, right? And I think that's fine. I don't actually think that's something to be concerned about. If you see the angle to actually get a big play or a big kill, I think you should go for it. And I like that they're having the confidence to do it. And you can hopefully, polish up your coordination and avoid some of those mistakes and make them less common over time. But they've been looking really good. On the TL side, it feels like everyone is just kind of talking about Jenkins versus Alfari, and I get that that's like the big shiny thing, and it's kind of similar with Cloud9, obviously, right? And we'll get to that later, because it's the obvious change, but it feels totally unfair to pin all of TL's issues on Jenkins, because the team as a whole is just not playing as well.
Yeah, you talk about the 100 Thieves game, that bot lane performance out of Core, JJ, and Tactical was not good. They had a pretty scrappy 2v2 to start the game out, which they kind of lost out on. Oh, well, you tried to make a play, but like the backwards queue, okay, mistake, whatever. And then the next time when they shifted in and tried to kill the Vayne, it just wasn't even close. Vayne had 300 health left and just killed them. And that was way more of an issue, was what was going on in the bot lane than the fact you're talking about Jenkins. Yeah, he got killed once by Abadage. They lane swapped onto him. It's not a good matchup for Akali early game, but then he still found some plays. It felt like there were other issues with the team, and Jenkins has subbed in, done okay, but if the rest of the team was playing like they had been playing, I think this team should look better.
I will say that Tactical has had some extremely good Varus games, and on the same token of that last one, definitely some low points for the bottom lane. The bottom lane, to me, had so many exceptional games for Team Liquid as well, and so it actually feels like consistency right now is an issue, which weird because we normally have not had those concerns with Team Liquid. Consistency was one of their go-to strengths. And yet with this variability now, you kind of come back to, well, there has to be this domino effect of internal strife that's going on that caused so many ripple effects, because Core JJ is, highest LP in the history of the North American server. This player is not like all of a sudden stop working, or there's some big problems that have come up, and Tactical playing so well on the Varus. There are a lot of these strengths here. It's just that they seem to really have lost a lot with the shakeup, both them and Cloud9. And you remember back to the first episode that we had, Azael, of the dive, where we are announcing these benchings of Sven, and
No, I thought you were talking about literally the first episode ever. I was like, what did we say in the first episode?
Oh, yeah,
ever?
yeah.
You don't have that.
This is a pop quiz. This is a pop quiz. Are you ready?
It's like 4 years ago, Kobe. I'm like, how is he going to tie this in?
This is going to be a good one.
We talked about Alfari 4 years ago in the first episode.
No, but it's, these, when you do have high profile benchings like this, these are symptoms of bigger issues between these teams, and these were our top teams. So it's really mixed everything up, and is going to be very interesting how they play through the long summer schedule now to actually climb back.
I think the thing about them too is it's not like we're saying they're trash and like they're slumping and they're like can't beat anyone. I think for me the concern is I don't think they beat a top half opponent through the first round, Robert. I'm checking it again. They lost to 100 Thieves, they lost to TSM, they lost to EG, and they lost to C9. And you're talking about this team supposed to be a title contending team, or that's how they were built. And so that's, for me, through summer, you have lost the mojo to be able to beat the other teams that are competing for the title right now, it seems. And that's why, these good Varus games I was having, it's like, well, okay, it's FlyQuest and Golden Guardians, and like you're beating some of the teams that I would expect you to beat. But when you go up against a team that can challenge you, they seem to struggle.
Yeah, and I mean, that is very concerning. And I think Santorin's been okay. But I do feel like Santorin has not been nearly as good as he was in spring, or even as good as he was with FlyQuest, where it felt like he was always finding plays and always making things happen. And I know even in spring, we talked about a little bit how it was more of like a shift of play style, because on FlyQuest, he had to kind of take more risks and go for level 2 ganks and do things, otherwise the team wouldn't win. And on TL in spring, it was just like, well, every lane wins by itself, so you can kind of just be there and be more supportive. In summer, that isn't happening as much. So it almost feels like he needs to shift his play style to be more part of the game and actually, try to go for some of more of these plays and try to shake things up a little bit, because, it doesn't feel good when your jungler is playing somewhat passively and the game is just kind of slipping away, right? And that is something that I feel like is tough, if you're constantly being asked to shift your play style. But with Alfari out, if your top lane isn't just hard winning every single game, if your bot lane is losing some of these bot lane 2v2s against some of the best teams, well, guess what? The jungler needs to be there to try to mix it up and try to play a little bit more of an explosive style. And maybe he hasn't been able to adjust quite yet.
On to Cloud9, our other top team at the top then. We're diagnosing all of these kind of chain reaction effects of some of the benchings. Cloud9, though, some people are getting, I feel like, further doomsday along that line than the Team Liquid reactions, because the Team Liquid reaction ones, people feel a little bit more stable, maybe because they didn't win in spring, and maybe because of the history of Cloud9 for summer drop-off looms very big, and whenever you have history possibly repeating itself or stories like that for people to lean into, it makes it more scary. But I've seen people already just calling for it. We're screwed. They were broken at MSI. They're never going to recover from that scuttle. Are you guys on board with that? I feel like generally we have much more tempered reactions, and we're not going to sentence them to doom for summer already, especially since it's a very long summer. But it is clear that they have multiple issues stemming maybe from stuff that happened at MSI, but are not limited to just subbing in King.
Yeah, the team doesn't look good at all. I mean, they're 4-5, but I almost hardly even want to count their win against CLG, because that felt like almost a fluke, right? CLG had that game pretty won, and I felt like threw it pretty hard. But either way, 4-5 for a team that actually dominated when you're looking back to spring and how they played there it's crazy. Like I'm pretty sure they already have as many losses or maybe even more losses than they had all of spring, right? This is a team that was actually like quite dominant overall. So they look bad. It's definitely not just about King, but I did get to talk about this a little bit on broadcast. I do think King is a big part of it, right? And that feels bad to say, but guess what? You have some big shoes to fill. Sven is one of the best, most consistent bot laners that the league has ever seen. And they're just not really doing much in their 2v2s anymore. Like they do fine. I think King plays fine in the 5v5s. And I feel like, hey, you're kind of showing me you're an LCS caliber ADC, but you're not one of the better ones. And you're replacing potentially the best one. So your team is a lot worse as a result, because it's not just about how the AD performs in team fights. It's about unlocking Vulcan, right? And I felt like I saw that really, really clearly when they were playing against TSM, where yes, maybe they had a bad matchup. You know, they did obviously play, I think it was like Ezreal Nautilus or something, and they're playing against like Lulu Cog. So it's probably a pretty bad 2v2, but they were kind of getting pounded in the 2v2, and Nautilus wants to roam. So when you're getting slammed, you can't really roam. And then at a certain point, they were playing this early game comp and they know they need snowball. So Vulcan's like, all right, well, I'm just going to roam anyway. And then the lane was so doomed where he's down like 30 CS. They lose their tower first in the bot lane. I don't even think a Herald ever got dropped down there. So it's like they're just losing too much. And it is handicapping not only what their marksman is doing, but also what their support is doing. And that unlocks the rest of the map.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with everything you're selling. I think, Blabber has not been explosive like he had been last split. And it's not like it's a worse meta necessarily for junglers to pop off. I mean, you look at Closer's Diana game, you're like, holy crap, this dude just smurf. He was double-digit kills, like single-handedly changing fights. Don't see any of that out of Blabber right now. And Perks himself on Renekton has looked really sus. And then in that game against TSM, I was doing the draft from the AD, and like, as we were coming down to it, I was like, okay, you banned Ori, but you didn't ban Victor, so he picks Victor, and now your whole team comp's AD. You need to play an AP matchup into a control mage. There's not that many great ones right now, and then he picks Syndra, and it's like, okay, but your comp is now just a front-to-back team fight comp against a team that's going to outscale you at like 20 minutes in the game.
Yeah, they had to win instantly.
Yeah, and they had such a bad draft. I think, like, you can win, of course, like with like the snowball that could happen, but the Lee Sin Jace matchup's not actually that great for Jace. It's a little bit like the Wukong one in my eyes, about like you get some push early, you can chunk him out, but eventually Lee Sin has playmaking tools to kill you. They
had to slam top.
But
yeah, and you can also make picks and make kills with the Syndra into Victor, especially with Xin Zhao. So I'm thinking these are early game choices that Cloud9 have chosen before and been able to execute on.
Yeah.
Maybe there were less answers available for teams in the past, I feel like. Might actually be something that is being overlooked right now. There's since there's more variety and more versatility, teams have more answers, but a lot also just comes down to playmaking. And things like this, drafts like this will always look just dog doo-doo if you don't
you draft early game and lose early.
Yeah, because then you're like, well, that never could have worked, because without getting these aggressive plays and without people popping off going, oh my God, Blabber and Perks win every 2v2 and they're just winning every skirmish and snowballing and taking every turret plate and invading. And if you don't do that, then you see the downfall, and it does start to feel scary as it's lining up with another kind of summer droop here for the team. I
mean, I was casting that game. I tweeted after the game. To me, I just no longer have any faith in Cloud9's ability to snowball early game comps, right? And that is the biggest difference. I feel personally, it's not about what their opponents are doing. It's on them and what they're doing. I think the perfect example in that game is, if this was like Olaf in spring or whatever, and you think those games where Blabber just gets ahead and then he absolutely runs over the game. In this game, they made that one dive happen top. It wasn't perfectly executed in the 3v1, so it was a 1-for-1. But I'm immediately saying, all right, but the Flash and the TP are now down on the Lee Sin, so you repeat, you punish him, and that's where you get your real advantage, because Jace is actually down gold off that play and down experience, because Blabber came top, sat there for a full wave with him while they waited for Syndra to move up, and then they did the 3v1 dive. Jace didn't get the kill on the dive and also shared experience, so he was actually behind off of this dive that they pulled off. And Perkz was ahead, but they didn't regank during the entire TP or flash cooldown. And after that, it was literally just Blabber power farming, and he's up 20 or 30 CS or whatever he was up over the Volibear. But guess what Volibear did? He went top like 3 times in a row and killed the only win condition really for Cloud9. You know, he just kept attacking Fudge in Jace versus Lee Sin, and in Jace versus literally every melee matchup who can all in. The way you win is you push, you harass, and you take turret plates. You have to play aggressive. You cannot just sit at your tower as Jace and play the game that way. It's just not the way the champion is made. You won't be successful. So your jungler needs to be up there to be waiting in the brush for the counter gank or to set up more dives. They didn't do any of that, and so that's why I'm like, well, this isn't about anything your opponents did. You didn't even try. You just went back to 6 camp clearing over and over after you made one play in the early game with a comp that you get outscaled by. So they just like didn't really do anything. I was so disappointed in Cloud9 in that game, like across the board. That wasn't just a King thing. That was a like, yeah, you lost bot, but also Blabber, you did nothing. You know, like
even at the beginning of it too, that should not have been a 1-for-1. That was a premature flash out for Blabber.
One more shot.
He could have walked out, saved his flash. Then with the extra one going through, Fudge probably would have been also able to just walk out.
Yep.
Or Fudge, given this scenario that he already dropped tower aggro early, doesn't exactly calculate the heat up damage of the tower and doesn't flash too. So as far as looking at what you are doing, that is one that is a quick and easy replay, to be able to make that a 1-for-0 as well.
But that's like the 100 Thieves thing where we're saying it's like, oh, they make a little mistake, but they go back to it, right? And then because it still was salvageable, because even though there was a 1-for-1, it's like, we kind of messed up, but no TP, no flash, you kill them again, now it doesn't matter, but they didn't try. That's the real sin to me. I can totally forgive little misexecutions because they know what they did. I guarantee you Blabber's like, guys, my bad, I could have taken one more shot immediately after that play. But the fact they didn't go back is what's like more unforgivable.
Sounds like we agree Cloud9's doomed. See you 2022.
I think they'll be all right.
Yeah. I just think it's like a course correction. Like if this is not changed, whether that be roster or just big team improvements, they feel like...
And maybe Sven will come back. I mean, it's becoming like a meme. Like literally every player and every team now tweets unbenched.
Honestly, it's funny too because I have more faith in Uzi coming back than Alfari or Sven on their original teams. Yeah, Max Waldo said in the interview right when he was benched at the beginning, he was like, he's probably not coming back for the whole split.
I know, but I mean, I just feel like at a certain point when you're investing this much money and if it's still going bad, and the fact that they have played with him for years feels like there could probably be some reconciliation or they could work through whatever issues there are.
I hope so.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Release the doc.
But I feel like it's got to be in the back of your head at least, right? They're not looking good. They won spring to bomb out in summer 2 times in a row. Like imagine the actual doomsday scenario where they don't make worlds again back-to-back years after winning spring. That would be an absolute tragedy for Cloud9. So I'm sure options are on the table at the very least. But to talk about some positive stuff, CLG looks so good this weekend. They went for the hardcore dive stuff. They actually found a play style that worked for them. And they went 3-0 for the first time since like 2011 or something.
2020, wasn't that long.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Broxa smash. That's the style that they've decided on. And then everybody else smash also.
I feel like Brox is the best he's looked since he's come to North America.
Absolutely.
And like even before this weekend, he was popping off on Lee Sin. He was making a lot of plays, and it felt like the problem that the team was having was in the mid to late game, like that C9 game that we're talking about. It just gets away from them. And what this comp does is it's like, all right, it's a team fight comp. When they contest us at objectives, press your R buttons. And so when you have someone who's playing well in the early game to get you leads, offset some of the disadvantages these simple comps usually have in laning or whatever it is, individual playmaking, if someone can bridge you to these team fights, which is what Brox is doing, then yeah, you just run people over at 5v5s because it's so much easier to execute than everything else.
Speaking of 2011, a little history lesson in this strategy of see hero, kill hero.
Oh, yeah?
Originated by M5, Alex Each. Innovative Russian strategy here. And it's self-explanatory. I don't need to continue the point. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, it's been fun. And I do think, I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. But to me, it's not just the draft, it's the way that they're playing it. They're playing with confidence. They're actually taking their moments anytime they see a team split. And I think you mentioned this, Mark, where it's like, okay, teams are just maybe not as used to having this many forms of hard engage, because teams are sometimes kind of like filtering in a little bit slowly. Like maybe the AD's a little bit split because they're pushing out mid as the rest of the team moves over towards a dragon, and then the AD joins them. But CLG is like, oh, he's over there, we're over here, fight, right? And they're just instantly hard engaging. And I think Smoothie actually has been playing some really good games too. It's not just about MarkZ. I thought his recon games were really key with the Galio pairing. He found really good angles on his engages and was consistently like getting really good timings on those engages. He did have like the one botched play where I think it was
the dig game. I think.
Yeah, the dig game where he was a little bit too far, and then it was like he kind of panicked. He flashed.
I saw that flash. I saw that.
But he redeemed himself the rest of that game. He played the rest of the game really well. So it's been nice to see them playing with confidence, because I think it's so easy to kind of like get beat down when you're a team that's near the bottom. Like they were second last. They were Golden Guardians was winning a couple games. Like, oh my God, are we actually going to be last? And to play with a little bit of confidence was nice.
I will say I'll be a little bit of a negative Nancy.
All right.
And I'll say I'm not 100% sold that it's not just the comp. Because the first 2 games were great, and don't get me wrong, they have the right like mindset. Brox is obviously playing well, whatever. But in the third game against Dig, once the Galio was banned out and I saw the self counter pick of Lissandra into Karma, and I was like, wait, this doesn't play like Galio at all in this matchup. Like you lose push, you can't contest scuttles, you can't use like roaming power with a global ult kind of thing. I was like, you just kind of self counter pick to do this comp that has a engaging mid laner. And it worked against Dignitas. They snowballed a lot of ganks topside because there was a level 1 that killed the GP, and then he was just like out of the game, and they just chain ganked him.
That wasn't their GP game, was it?
It was.
Talking about wasn't it Kled versus Lee Sin top?
Was it a Lee? I thought they killed.
Am I wrong?
I'm pretty sure it was the second set game. It was the second set game because they went GP. Or they went set Kled set. It was the second.
Kled was in the second game. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So this is the third game against Dig. They chain ganked, and so they kind of offset some of these early game weaknesses that really shouldn't have happened when you just let Karma get free shove.
Yeah. And Fake God also really trolled that level 1.
Fake God trolled the hell out of that level 1.
He could have actually lived, and instead he died, gave over first blood to his lane opponent, and still wasted his flash.
Yeah. So that was a game where I'm like, and we'll get into Dignitas in a second here, but I was like, if you play that game versus most of the teams in the league with that draft, like, are you really winning that game? Because they also had some other mistakes, like we're talking about the Smoothie thing. So I'm still a little gun shy on like going all in on the CLG thing, because that last game to me was almost a bit more about like the Dignitas story than the CLG one. Mm-hmm. But I still love the weekend, love the draft. I like that they committed to it and went like, here's our second option after Galio. We saw it to the Lissandra. And I would wish more teams had like this draft that they prepared.
Yeah, I don't get this conversation of, oh, it's just because the draft, they're not actually good. So yeah. they found a draft that is actually good, a strat that is actually good, and they're getting their wins with it. That's what matters. And I would definitely say that MarkZ is for sure.
Yeah, he is legitimate.
You can't argue that he is not individually playing better as far as, trying to judge some of the, the really good plays or some of the blunders. Like, it's really heartwarming to see, and I like how you set it up of CLG are about to hit rock bottom. Golden Guardians is coming for them. Well, guess what? That's the time where CLG always bounce back, right when you least expect it.
And when we're giving credit to coaches a little bit about Reaper and stuff, Moon did this in Academy to help turn that team around. He's
the source of the Vi. Also, when you had the earlier question about champions that you really were happy when they got into pro play, he was the one who brought in Shaco. I just want to give him a little shout out for that, even though it didn't end.
Shaco was a disaster.
It didn't look good.
Yeah.
But I was so happy that he brought it in, and I wanted him to do it again. I was sad that the first game was like that, so we wouldn't get to see it again. But
I remember you being so excited because you love Shaco, and they came in, it absolutely like sprinted it down, and then never got played again. Yeah. But it's fun to see. I mean, is it CLG to the moon? No, I don't think so. But like, are they the worst team in the league now? Clearly not, right? Like, yeah. I think it's cool. And will it maybe only work against like the Dignitases and stuff? Maybe, but you're still a much better team then. And I also think that there's something that you can learn from this strategy as a lot of teams. Because guess what? Maybe it is, to your point, Mark. Maybe it's the Galio that's key, right? But you are not going to get Galio banned against every team in the league. So if I'm a coach on another team, if I'm on Cloud9 or TSM or whatever, yeah, exactly. Like even if your read is it's only good if you get literally Galio, Rakan, and Vi, and otherwise it's trash. Even if that's your read, guess what? Those champions don't get banned ever. So if you see your opponents draft something early and you think it's good into it, you can run that ideal composition. Right. And having these things that you work into your drafts as a threat to maybe even then draw Galio bans the next week when you have no intention of playing it, I think is always awesome. So I'm going to be interested. I hope we get the continued evolution of it.
So team on a positive trajectory, CLG. One of the teams they beat, negative trajectory, Dignitas. Do they still have a pulse?
No.
Do you feel anything when you check the vitals?
They've decomposed completely.
They're already decomposed.
Honestly, I'm not even gonna touch and check. I'm pissed.
I could smell before I came in the room.
I'm actually pissed. I was so I was all on the party bus. I was like, this is so much fun, and every time we interview them,
and they're all dead.
Oh my God.
Okay. Cut that part out. I was all on the party bus, and every time we interview them, it's Aframu and Dardoch talking about the camaraderie of the team and how they're all coalesced and they're all of one mind and it's all for one and the goal of improvement, and that's all we care about. And the young guys are learning from the veterans, and the veterans are being kind and leading the young guys in the correct direction. And then you're like, wait, but Saligo, though, like, he was doing really well, and he was part of this big story of finally having his chance and proving himself, and he was doing it, and then boom, on the bench. Oh, okay, another one claims. But and then the team, they were originally built around Dardoch, and then they're benching Dardoch. Okay, maybe it's less surprising because so much history, and we don't have to send the investigators in to figure out what happened. But it's two of these big parts of the party bus, and when half the party leaves, they look like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, man. I think the Yusui one for Saligo is the one that I'm more confused about, because Saligo had a bit of a struggle in some laning phase and stuff, but his playmaking and team fighting was usually
in there.
He was there. Whereas like Yusui, I'm like, okay, he's a 4-0 Viego. Did nothing with it, and it's like they seem like almost opposite players in that regard. Where like one maybe a little bit weaker in the early game, but works with his team and makes a lot of kills happen and find comebacks. Other one,
I don't even think his laning has been good though. I actually don't even give him that.
For Yusui, yeah. I
actually think he's just been like also bad in laning, but doesn't really feel like he does anything in team fights. And it's a small sample size, so like that's like a rough take, but. Yeah, I just don't see any upside, actually.
Yeah, and then the Dardoch thing, like we said, is like, well, there's the history, so who knows exactly what happened this time around, but the team was coming off the wheels before that happened. It felt like they were like 1-5, so.
I mean, I think everyone knows what happened when literally Friday night after a match, they tweet out, Dardoch is benched for the rest of the weekend, right? Like, clearly there's some sort of blow up after that game for it to be a mid-weekend thing. Yep. I don't think that's like speculating too far by any means.
For a lot of these, I want, like an inside TV show where we're investigating and finding all the mysteries inside these teams. But everybody, as soon as they saw that one,
I was like, oh, yep, okay, I get it. But it's just sad. It's honestly just sad because Dignitas was really fun to watch. Even though their early games weren't amazing, Saligo had really good team fighting. I still think their bot lane is the bright spot. Yes, Fakeout had a terrible game, but like overall, he's still improved a lot. Mm-hmm. Afro and Neo right now, though, it just feels like it's them versus the world, and everything else is just absolutely on fire. It feels like they have lost their identity of actually being one of the best team fighting teams. I mean, Freak had them up there as potentially the best team fighting team in the league. Freak has some bold claims. You can laugh at it, but like I wouldn't take that stance, but I would have agreed that they are one of the best team fighting teams. Like, they're 5v5s because they actually pulled out a lot of incredible 5v5s from gold deficits. Their early game had kind of been the issue. So I'm really disappointed with these changes. Maybe, stuff internally happened. They had clearly felt like they needed to do something. Maybe Asui's just been crushing in every scrim, but it hasn't translated to stage. And Dig's games have been straight up depressing lately. It's just like, it just feels like they're doomed instantly in almost every game off of like easily avoidable mistakes. And it's tough.
On the not depressing end of the spectrum, Immortals continues to impress for me. I would say that they are the most improved team in summer. I think it's close with 100 Thieves, but it felt like they had a little bit more ground to work with, you could say. Whereas like no one on Immortals, like from the first split or summer or spring split, jumped out at you as like, oh yeah, well this guy's going to help turn it around, So like I think their improvement's a lot more impressive in that regard. They could have 3-0'd this weekend if that TSM base race went a little different, and that would have been their second 3-0. I mean, who knows? But either way, they're clearly a much better team, much more proactive. Whereas their games were like almost boring sometimes to watch in spring. I'm actually enjoying watching 100 Thieves. They have, or excuse me, Immortals. They have interesting drafts. I'm really happy about this team's turnaround.
I like that we have a conservation of happiness in the league. Yes, the top teams are sad and they're self-sabotaging, but then we've got CLG and Immortals and all these comeback stories of righteous victories being laid out in smiles all across the stage. It's so fun to see when they get these victories, because these teams have had to cope with some stuff. You see them on stage giving winner interviews and they're like, they have been through some stuff. They've got the whole team here waiting after to be like, we're up there giving interviews now, baby.
Just a crumb, my lord, and now they're at the feast.
It's so cool. Like, Brox is up there smiling ear to ear, and everyone's like, this is so wholesome. You see Immortals up there, the whole team is behind it. I love it. We've got balance in the LCS.
I mean, I think there have clearly been some crazy games, some messy games, but the LCS has been so fun, I think, actually, to watch this split. There has been a ridiculous amount of just like insane games where it just comes to these crazy scenarios that are really, really fun to watch. All right, we got some anchor questions here. This one comes from Paul Cruikshank.
Hey guys, long-time listener.
It's Hermione's cat.
Just figured I'd help you out a little bit. I think I know the bet that Azael had lost. I believe I can't remember exactly what split it was, but I believe the bet was Cloud9 versus the field as far as who would win. The question I have for you other than that is what champion that got reworked would you bring back an ultimate from? The one that I was thinking of most recently was Urgot ult, where you could swap places. Was kind of a fun ult and difficult to use, but a lot of fun when you could pull it off right. Love the show. Thanks, guys.
All right, we got to start with the first half of this.
Yep.
So at the start of the day, we were looking at this question, and Kobe and I were both like, oh, that's what the bet was. We couldn't remember. And then Azael's like, what? I knew that the whole time. And we're like, we were on a show like last week or 2 weeks ago.
I literally didn't even read the question and I knew what the bet was.
Yeah, but the point was we did the dive 2 weeks ago and we were like, we can't remember what the Ezreal bet was about. And you agreed. You're like, yeah.
I'm pretty sure he led that. He was like, yeah, I don't know what this was from, but yeah, I know there's a bet.
This was just like one of those things where we're just like, this is so long ago, no one's going to care or remember. So like, haha, we don't remember. That's what I thought we were doing there.
I care because I won the bet. This is another one of those ridiculous
It was the one where you took Cloud9. I literally got every other team, and I was like, this is the dumbest bet you can take, Mark.
He's saying this like it's matter of the fact. I feel like I've never been gaslighted as hard as this morning when Azael's coming in. Yeah, I knew the whole time, guys.
And we're like, we had this conversation multiple times, and you never told us in the multiple
I didn't think it was relevant at all.
It's relevant to me. I won a bet that was a long shot bet, and you just like, I can't remember.
I swear too, he was right there with us, like, yeah, I got no idea. We don't remember.
Yeah, for sure. I swear to God, we had a conversation. And he was like, yep, can't remember, guys.
Now he's like, yeah, I knew all along.
It's like I took another long shot bet with you at TSM, saying first place. Like I'll take the long shot bets. Give me the.
Take terrible bets,
and I win them sometimes. And you don't remember.
That's the important thing, is that he does win them sometimes.
He does win them sometimes.
That's his tagline.
I'm 50-50 on. Unless there's another one I forgot.
Mark, I sometimes win terrible bets. Zimmerman. That's what we call it.
Let's head to Vegas, boys.
I
sometimes win it all. Sometimes lose it all.
Okay. I was struggling to think of more reworked ultimates for the second half of the question,
I was
though.
distracted.
And I was like, you know what? The Urgot one, that sounds good. That was cool. Position reversing
Hyperkinetic position reverser
is always cool.
Mm-hmm.
Good memory.
I might be wrong.
It's useless information that you'll never need anymore.
You needed this moment. His life has been leading up to this.
You're right. I went too far. I overstepped.
Yeah.
Never is too strong of a word. You might rarely need that information.
I honestly can't really think of a lot of other ones either. There's like, I'm thinking of the Fiora one. I'm thinking of.
Oh, Did we not do a very similar question to this then? Because we talked about
talked about
Ultimate
reworks.
before.
We talked about which was our favorite old reworks.
Okay.
Not which alt would you bring back. So I think along the train of the Urgot one, there's it's Vengeful Spirit, I want to say, in Dota 2, where you can swap allies as well.
Yeah.
I would like to see that. I think that is a really cool one where you can swap allies or enemies, where there's more of that risk factor. So it's like you can play almost as a peel, right? Where you're like swapping yourself into danger and swapping your ally out. I think that would be cool. And I know that's not the exact question, but that's always what I thought of when I saw that Urgot alt. I just thought it was kind of like a less cool version of something in another game.
I feel like the alt was cool because you got a bunch of resists on it too. So like it made you a tank, and you like would
Why
flash.
is that cool? Being tanky.
Well, I think you flash alt swap with the valuable member, so they killed him and you get to live. The problem was the rest of his kit didn't really like make like now I'm in the middle of them, and you're like I just have single target like
He was like
shots.
a poke guy.
Yeah, it was not like a super synergistic kit, but
You just made me think of other Dota Ultimates that are very similar and then slightly better or cooler than the League one. You think of Twisted
the
Fate.
designers are watching.
Twisted Fate reveals everybody. What was it was close to name in Vengeful Spirit, but it was a hard carry, and you'd pop up a clone next to every opponent.
Oh,
and
Night Stalker.
you could
Or
swap.
it's not a
Night
sucker.
Fiend. Or,
So you get vision.
Phantom Assassin.
It's
what I said.
it's not the crit one, but I think it is Phantom Assassin. So you get vision of them just like Twisted Fate ult. You could teleport
You can turn into a
to them just like Twisted, but it also like they're dealing little bits of damage while
yeah,
they're
you had
doing
the
it.
on-hit effects. It would.
Yeah.
they would-
You can't teleport anywhere though, because
Yeah,
you can
only
only
to a
teleport to
person.
the clones by people. So Twisted Fate is more versatile for strategy as split pushing.
While we're not answering the question, old Scion alt is probably the worst alt for like.
I don't remember
kit.
what that was.
Remember how he queued?
It was a bunch of attack speed and lifesteal.
And it was AoE lifesteal. You would heal things around you. So it made you a good split pusher, but the rest of his kit was like a point and click stun and a shield that scaled off AP that exploded for
This is
damage.
the hard question because I just don't remember a lot of the old change stuff.
Yeah, so we just go with one of the 2 or 3 that we know and say, I agree with the caller. Good choice. We went through all the
Scion alt
options.
change was terrible. Or it was a good change, excuse me.
Yeah,
So,
because it was.
Which you want back?
It's
I know, that's why I said we
Not
weren't
bad.
answering the question with Dota questions, so get out of here telling me I'm not answering it well. All right.
Flexibility, guys. Theme of the episode.
we all suck equally. All
Theme
right.
of the episode.
Thanks for the question, Paul. Okay, we got Twitter questions here. This first one comes from Wille, Åhlén. Says, big fan of the dive here in Sweden. I had a question for you guys about the rework of Tom. If you guys think he will stay only support or move to the top lane. Also, what do you think about the rework? Will it change the purpose of when to pick him? Example is Senna. So I think that this is definitely pushing him hard away from support. I mean, the Devour is literally going to be his ultimate if it stays as is. It's like a 2-minute cooldown, right? That's why you pick him as support, is to just ruin the fun of champions that have pick. Right? Ruin the fun of Morgana and Thresh and stuff. So that's basically becoming the ultimate. And his Abyssal Voyage thing where he like goes somewhere is becoming a basic ability, but it's used as like an engage tool. The idea is that you pop up under someone and it knocks them up, and like that's your like engage ability, and that's on a basic ability. So
You got Rek'Sai?
well, it's much longer
WWE.
range, right? So you can kind of like jump in on people. So to me, that fully reads as like tank, because his clear doesn't sound good because he has like no AoE damage, right? So I'm not thinking jungler. So I'm immediately thinking you are a tank, you're in the top lane, you're hard engaged, you want to have the levels, you want to have the items. So I think they are trying to kill him as a support. And I think this is actually good because Tahm Kench is just like a universally hated champion. And so they nerf him into like uselessness in solo queue usually. And he still gets played in pro because guess what? Like denying one key ability for your marksman or whatever is worth having sometimes. So I just think he's been such an uninteresting champion, both in solo queue and in pro for years, because the Devour was just a horrible ability from the start, right? And this is basically killing it. Like eating up an enemy or an ally on a 2-minute cooldown when that's your ultimate, like who cares? That's fine. That's just like a QSS at that point, right? So I'm kind of keen for it.
Big agree.
Next one.
All right. Vincent Biever says, previously you guys talked about PoE and its lack of games on Melee champions. Considering where we are starting to see more, the doctor's moving around, more of them in pro play, what is the likelihood we will see him bring out Lissandra as an answer in the future?
Could. I think we saw Lissandra once already. It was in a worse matchup, I would argue, than probably some of the melee matchups. I'm not exactly sure, but it worked with the comp that CLG put. So if you can find a good engage comp that you're going to be following up on, probably.
PoE is willing to try everything.
Yeah.
It is a very different style and champion for the whole team overall. For him to be on an initiator, getting in there and not a big damage carry. So it is a very different look. I think the chances are good of him going on it though, or at least trying it, because I think he is one that loves to try that type of stuff. And as we went over last time with the melee champions, like he does have, sporadic uses of all these different ones whenever they're popping up as being very good. So yeah, I think the chances are quite good.
You know what I was surprised they didn't bring out this weekend was Ziggs. I actually was so sure he was going to play it. I picked it on my fantasy and stuff. I was like, he'll for sure play this. This is absolutely his style. It's really strong right. Didn't play it. But I feel like he'll bring out that, right? Like this is just your kind of champion. And it's really good right now, I think.
I think it's a little different because it is, like Kobe was saying, more of an engage, less scaling, less.
Ziggs is?
Oh, sorry. I thought you're saying you expect him to play Lasagna.
No. I'm saying what I expected.
Yeah. I got you.
He's trying to sell his Ziggs bans for fantasy off on people.
No, I was picking, not banning. I didn't think anyone else was gonna play it. I thought my guy was gonna play it.
I honestly think that Ziggs might even be better served as a bottom laner right now. I expect 100 Thieves gonna pick it even without
especially
Senna.
Fuhi.
I don't think you need Senna with it. I think you could have Ziggs and any support.
I do feel you need an AD like a marksman somewhere.
You need AD threat.
Yeah, but I particularly think you need a marksman to be able to play standard League of Legends. People are so uncomfortable team fighting without a marksman, and teams just look worse without it. Maybe they would do it, but I would think we wouldn't see it unless we got a Lucian mid or something alongside it.
I think
that's my at least thought.
Maybe you're right about teams not being comfortable, but I think at least from it
can be good
in theoretical play pattern. Yeah. Ziggs can do the turret destruction and DPS that usually you need marksmen to do.
Totally on the same page with in theory it is good, but in practice when I've seen teams try to do this, it never looks good. Teams just don't seem to know how to team fight without marksmen. This was the same thing we saw when mages were meta previously. So that's why I liked the combo with Senna, because it gave you an obvious way to play the game a similar way. And if Abadogar or someone wants to bring out a Lucian mid or whatever, I'd be totally down for it. But we'll see. Maybe you're right, and maybe they'll be able to pull it off.
We got one from one of our oldest callers, David Peterle. Welcome back, my friend. It's been a while since he's been on the show. He's got a question. Can one team shake up the meta? Will CLG's pure engage comp see other teams investing in a more peel in the draft? Again, we were looking for it last time. I think there are even more champions than we thought of as far as the big AoE ones, having peel and having counter dive and investing in these strategies. And I sure hope so, because I love the way the game is trending right now, where people are thinking the next step. What can I use to counter what this team is doing? And what is their identity? So I definitely hope the trend continues.
I'd be surprised if people went too hard on the peel thing, because then you're building a counter for this one strategy. Because what you're gonna go Janna Gragas and some other displacement things to knock people off you when they all go in. I think more likely people just pick up some of the pieces that CLG put together. Is Vi gonna start being meta? I don't know, but I could see Set, Galio, Rakan being played in general with a Xin and whatever else.
But you know what's really good at peeling that also dismantles their comp? You just take the Galio. Right? Yeah. If you're convinced that CLG is only going to play dive, whether they get the Galio or not, just play Galio. You can put it support even. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's actually great for counter engage, right? Their 4-man melee squad all rolls up on your carry and you ult in and then taunt them all. It's good.
I'm still holding out for Swain too. PoE is my hope for Swain, I think.
Yeah. I think it's good, but just no one plays it, and so it just feels like no one puts in time on Swain, so no one wants to play it. It always has a good win rate. I agree, it's great for counter dive, but just not a popular champion.
Funny story too, by the way. When we're on the David Peterle question, our producer thought that when we said David Peterle throughout the years, we were trolling him, that it was Freak's account, David
P. Turley.
David P. Turley, and we were just saying it funny this whole time.
Why do you gotta put our producer on blast like that?
Because it's a
funny story.
It's a funny story that a longtime fan will enjoy and know that he is part of the lore of the dive.
I mean, I think a lot of people will enjoy that story. The idea that I was intentionally misreading Freak.
David P. Turley.
Yeah, it's a freak
David Peterle.
I thought it was I thought it was a freak burner account, you know?
Yeah, that's what he's saying. Is he thought it was like a freak account. Well, that Freak was actually sending them in, and David Freak Turley.
Yeah.
So David P. Turley.
Yeah.
But it's David Peterle. So I think that is absolutely hilarious that he thought for literally like 4 years, I have just been like trolling Freak by refusing to read his real name on the dive, but it was someone else. All right, that'll do it for this episode of The Dive. Thank you, Honda, for making this one possible. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm, and please send us your questions using the hashtag TheDiveLOL on Twitter. Finally, make sure to give us your own tanks on Anchor, tanks on Anchor. Don't do that.
The
Tanks
acorns as well.
Anchor.
And
all of the above.
And how do you feel about flexibility?
Flexibility, yep.
It's key.
Give us your hot takes on Anchor.fm. Maybe we will respond to them. The LCS continues its second round robin this Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. It's TL versus EG. We'll see you there.